Hello and welcome to Monthly Winners, where we explore the dark side of history. Today we are going to talk about one of the most famous and admired figures of ancient Rome, Marcus Aurelius. He was the emperor, the philosopher, and the author of the Meditations, a book of personal reflections and wisdom that has inspired generations of readers. But was he really the ideal ruler and the model of virtue that he is often portrayed as? Or did he have a darker side that we tend to overlook or ignore? In this episode, we're going to examine some of the criticisms and controversies that surround Marcus Aurelius and try to answer the question, was he a good emperor and a good Stoic? Marcus Aurelius was born in 121 CE and became the emperor of Rome in 161 CE. After the death of his adoptive father, Antoninus Pius. He ruled until his death in 180 CE and was the last of the so-called Five Good Emperors, a period of relative peace and prosperity for the Roman Empire. He was also a follower of Stoicism, a school of philosophy that taught that the only thing under our control is our own judgments and actions, and that we should live according to reason and nature, and cultivate virtues such as wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations as a personal diary, where he recorded his thoughts and advice on how to live a good life, cope with adversity, and fulfill his duties as a ruler and a human being. His Meditations are considered one of the classics of Western literature and philosophy, and have influenced many thinkers and leaders throughout history. However, Marcus Aurelius was not without flaws or faults, and his life and reign were not as perfect or peaceful as they might seem. He faced many challenges and crises, both external and internal, and his responses to them were not always consistent with his philosophical principles or his reputation as a benevolent and wise emperor. In fact, some of his actions and decisions have been criticized by historians and scholars, and have raised questions about his character and his legacy. Let's take a look at some of the main criticisms of Marcus Aurelius and see if they have any merit or not. One of the most common and serious criticisms of Marcus Aurelius is that he was a persecutor of the Christians, and that he allowed or encouraged the violence and discrimination against them during his reign. Christianity was a new and growing religion in the Roman Empire, and it was seen as a threat and a challenge by many pagans, who accused the Christians of being atheists, traitors, and enemies of the gods and the state. The Christians refused to worship the emperor and the traditional gods, and they followed a different set of beliefs and practices that were often misunderstood or misrepresented by their opponents. As a result, the Christians faced hostility and harassment from the authorities and the mobs, and they were often arrested, tortured, executed, or forced to renounce their faith. Some of the most famous martyrs of the early church, such as Polycarp, Justin Martyr, Blandina, and Perpetua, died during the reign of Marcus Aurelius. But was Marcus Aurelius personally responsible for the persecution of the Christians? Did he issue any edicts or orders to punish them or suppress their religion? The evidence is not very clear or conclusive on this matter. There is no record of any general imperial edict against the Christians, and most of the persecutions seem to have been local and sporadic, depending on the initiative and the attitude of the provincial governors and the public opinion. Marcus Aurelius may have been unaware or indifferent to the plight of the Christians, or he may have tolerated or approved of the persecutions as a way of maintaining the social order and the religious harmony. He may have also seen the Christians as a source of disorder and rebellion, especially after the revolt of Avidius Cassius, a general who claimed to be the emperor in 175 CE, and who was rumored to have been supported by some Christians. Marcus Aurelius was a devout pagan and a defender of the traditional Roman religion, and he may have viewed Christianity as a dangerous and irrational superstition that threatened the stability and the prosperity of the empire. However, Marcus Aurelius was also a philosopher and a Stoic, and he should have known better than to judge or harm people based on their beliefs or opinions. He wrote in his Meditations that he learned from his adoptive father, Antoninus Pius, to be tolerant of the ignorant and those who form opinions without consideration. He also wrote that the best way of avenging yourself is not to become like the wrongdoer. He praised the virtues of justice, kindness, and forgiveness, and he condemned the vices of anger, hatred, and cruelty. He claimed to follow the example of Socrates, who was unjustly condemned to death by the Athenians for his philosophy, and who died with dignity and calmness. How could Marcus Aurelius, then, justify or condone the persecution of the Christians, who were also unjustly condemned for their philosophy, and who also died with dignity and calmness? How could he reconcile his philosophical ideals with his political actions? How could he be a good emperor and a good Stoic at the same time? This is one of the paradoxes and the challenges that Marcus Aurelius faced, and that we still face today. How do we balance our personal convictions with our social responsibilities? How do we deal with people who have different or opposing views from ours? How do we respect the diversity and the freedom of others, while also protecting the common good and the order of society? These are not easy questions to answer, and they require a lot of reflection and dialogue. Marcus Aurelius may have failed or fallen short in some aspects of his life and reign, but he also tried to do his best and to learn from his mistakes. He was not a perfect ruler or a perfect philosopher, but he was a human being, with strengths and weaknesses, virtues and vices, successes and failures. He was a man who struggled and suffered, who loved and lost, who hoped and dreamed, who wrote and thought, who lived and died. He was a man who left us a legacy of wisdom and inspiration, but also of controversy and criticism. He was a man who deserves our admiration and our scrutiny, our praise and our critique, our gratitude and our honesty. That's all for today's episode of The Dark Side of History. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you want to know more about Marcus Aurelius and his life and philosophy, you can check out some of the sources that I used for this episode, such as the Meditations, the Historia Augusta, the Historia Romana, and the works of modern scholars and authors. You can find the links and the references in the description of this podcast. And if you have any comments or questions, or if you want to suggest a topic for a future episode, you can contact me through my email or social media accounts. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember, history is not black and white, but full of shades and colors. Stay curious, stay critical, and stay tuned.